Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP.
Managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. When it comes to cybersecurity, the biggest threats are the ones you never see coming. SecureWorks detects and responds to cyber attackers' ever-changing tactics. We come armed with Taegis, a security analytics platform designed to recognize attacks and stop them before they do harm. SecureWorks, defending every corner of cyberspace. Learn more at securityweekly.com/SecureWorks. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover in one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. I did it myself today. We review suggestions monthly and we'll reach out to you once reviewed. It works well. It's the easiest way to put in, like when I have my own suggestions, I'm like, I want to have this guy, this lady on the show. I go and use the guest form.
You don't know a guy? You don't know a person that can help you with that, Adrian?
I don't need help.
It's just that easy.
It's just that easy. Like I could, but it would be the same effort. I could shoot a DM to Renee, but I mean, it's just as easy to go the form and the workflow's already all in there. So they're going to have to do that anyway.
I just thought you were cool enough. You just snapped your fingers and people came on the show. Boom.
Nope. It takes work, Tyler. There's a bunch of work behind the scenes that you don't see that goes on.
That I don't do, that goes on too.
Yeah. You got a show. You do that same work.
I do.
Yep. Got to chase people down. Are you available this day? No. How about this day? It's you know the grind.
I do. Every day.
All right. So if you check out securityweekly.com/ESW295, it will take you to the place you need to be to see the stories we're going to talk about today. There are 36. We're probably not going to cover all of them. So if you want the full list, make sure to hit that link and read through them and see what you're missing.
What's good with funding, right?
It hasn't dried up. We've got 12 funding announcements. We got a dozen of them. I mean, we haven't seen anything as crazy as we did, like at the beginning of the year, right? Or at the end of last year. Like we're not seeing any more like Talon and Island $100 million Series A. We're not seeing any of that stuff anymore.
Yeah. The lunacy has kind of distilled itself from the market. I'd imagine the valuations are coming down, although you never know when you see these funding what the valuation is. Most of the time they don't tell you.
I think we have a signal that they've come down because we're seeing some deals not happen. I think more than usual we're seeing some. We've always seen IPOs back out. I mean that's not abnormal. Like with we're going to talk about Cybereason today, maybe, or did we talk about that? I always get a bit confused when I'm gone for a week because I still pull the stories, but I'm not on the show.
Cybereason's in here, but not for funding. They're in here for the opposite problem. They're in here for layoffs this week.
Layoffs, yeah. But and I do mention that the IPO they started going through the confidential IPO process with the SEC, but then backed out due to market forces is the most
normally
common
I love
reason.
to start with the fundings and chew through those quickly, right? But let's just start right there.
Okay.
I mean, this is a topsy-turvy world. Something has significantly changed. If you think about the Cybereason kind of personifies the drastic flip-flop from last Q4 to this Q4, right? Last Q4, Cybereason on path for IPO. Nothing's going to stop them. They're worth $5 billion or $10 billion or whatever they're at. Fast forward 12 months, Cybereason sacks 200 employees, 17% of workforce, absolutely getting crushed in valuation. It's just absolutely crazy how the coin has flipped over in 12 months.
I think they waited too long. I think they missed the opportunity. I think maybe SentinelOne was the last one to IPO, where they could IPO, I think, safely and have a decent. I actually haven't looked at SentinelOne. I don't know how they're doing on the public market, but CrowdStrike did very well. SentinelOne made it happen. Wait, didn't SentinelOne get acquired by somebody, or was it that they acquired somebody else?
Gosh, the news just blurs. But, just because you went public doesn't mean you're safe. It simply means that you got some liquidity for some people, right?
They acquired Ativo. That's what I was thinking of.
This week also, and I didn't put this in the news, but I will send it over to the team to get added. But this week also it was announced that IronNet, which is went public via a SPAC last year or the year before, I think went in 2021. Yeah, August of 2021, so a year ago, just over a year ago, went public via a SPAC. Faces delisting from the New York Stock Exchange. They're about to get delisted after hitting a high of $14 post IPO. They're down to below $1 in stock price now, and are about to get bounced off the New York Stock Exchange. You're not safe after you go public either.
Yeah, no, and we've seen some SPACs unraveled. Also, I'm trying to think of the Complex was one. Starts with a Q, ends with an X. Complex also was going to go public via SPAC. But I think they stopped the process before they actually went public, or they may have been only public for a few days. So, and that was last year though, I think. So even last year, the SPAC process was looking kind of shaky.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Just go show you how fast the tides turn, and if you miss that IPO window, you're toast.
Yeah, and Mr. Polyapattia, gave back money on his 2 of his SPACs, right?
Yeah, couldn't get them filled. Couldn't find companies that were worth their salt to take public, and ended up giving back money to the original investors.
Yeah, and there's like a time limit now, and I think they only had a couple days left on the time limit where they had to find something for it, and they were back out of it.
To a couple of years. You had to have a reverse merger complete within a couple of years, or you had to delist the SPAC, and those things just dried up. You gave the money back. Yeah.
So on that trend, moving to another trend, story number 19. So one of the other things we're seeing that's somewhat adjacent to this, not just valuations dropping, but perks going away for employees of what's the term? It cuts off here. Let's see. FANG was the old term. What's the new term for all the big tech companies? Manta. Now that Facebook is Meta, we needed a new acronym.
Oh, geez.
Manta.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, like a bunch of the free laundry service, the all the free meals, like some of that stuff is going away, and they're saying it's going to be a rude awakening for people, like particularly in San Francisco, like certain locations where the cost of living is really high, so those perks were kind of a big selling point. Like you kind of needed that to get somebody to move into a 650 square foot efficiency, and pay $4,000 for it, right? And that's part of the reason we've seen people flooding to Florida and Nashville and Austin.
Yeah, for sure. This gives me flashbacks to the. Oh, sorry, Katie, you go ahead.
I was just going to say the reality is if you're hired for a job and they're paying for certain things, whether it's warranted or not, let's set aside the whole whether somebody should be paying for your dry cleaning or for 3 meals a day. But if you're hired with that expectation and then those quote benefits are taken away, that's actual money out of your pocket. So it's almost like being given a downgrade of your salary. It's almost like they're decreasing your salary, because if you have to start coming up with money to pay for the things that you were initially sold on to join the company, that your cost of living goes up significantly. And so it is a real conundrum for both companies and employees.
Yeah, I called them perks, but really it's part of your benefits package, right? I think that's the way most people look at it.
If you enter a company and they say, "Hey, we're going to pay for this," again, whether they're ridiculous perks or not, I've seen some that are
money's money.
Yeah, it's money. If somebody says, "Here, I'm going to give you this benefit," and then 2-3 years later they go, nope. Then you either go without. If it's something like food, if they're feeding you 2 or 3 times a day at work, you can't go without that. If it's a dry cleaning service, totally different. If it's a gym membership, you probably shouldn't go without it, but you could go without it. So, there are certain decisions that have to be made. But if they're basic, some of these basic things, transportation benefits, issues those, it decreases your actual salary, because you have to pay for certain things now that when you were recruited, it was part of the dating process, right? You were promised all these things, and then 20 years into the marriage, you're like, okay, this is not so good anymore.
Well, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about are office specific, right? And we're deep into this trend of most employees sending the signal, whether indirectly or directly, that they don't want to come into the office, or they want to come into the office less anyway. So it makes sense that companies are saying, well, if 70% of the people aren't coming into the office anymore, or are only coming in a few days a week, does it make sense for us to have, a chef full time on site, or to have a laundry service come by and pick up and drop off, twice a day? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't make sense for them anymore with everybody working from home.
I lived through this in 99 to 2000, right? I lived through the dot-com crash. I was at a startup. I was employee 85 as a startup in 1997 that went to 1,500 employees and IPO'd in 99. I think we IPO'd in 99, either 99 or 2000, just as everything crashed.
Wow.
We IPO'd. So I lived through this, right? I actually remember sleeping under my desk in a sleeping bag many nights, because I just didn't want to bother going home, because I had 3 meals in the kitchen. I had pinball machines over in the kitchen. I had plenty of entertainment. It's like, why go home? I'll just stay here. Basically, I could have lived rent free. I don't have a lot of empathy, because those are decisions that the employees make. They can choose to go home. They can choose to not. But here's the thing: as a business owner and a runner of a business, when things get tight, would you rather lay off people or cut perks? I'll cut perks all day. People will figure out how to pay for it. They'll lower their own cost of living at home. They'll figure out how to come up with that capital to feed themselves. If they can't, then they're laid off. And as a business owner, as harsh as this seems, that's many ways to get forced attrition anyways. And that's exactly why a lot of these high-tech companies, these previously known as FANG, whatever they're calling them now, you said, companies.
Manta.
That's why they're actually making people come back to the office. It's not really because they care if they come back to the office. It's because they want to get a 10% attrition without having to deal with doing layoffs. Force people to come back. 10% people say they won't. Great. We achieved our layoffs without laying people off. We don't have to announce a layoff. We don't have to pay severance packages. We just get less people, right? And the food's the same thing. The perks are the same thing. Get rid of the perks, more people will leave, right? This is just it happened in 99, it happened in 08, and it's happening in 2022, and it'll happen again in 2030.
Yep, tightening the belt.
And they don't care if people don't like it.
Yeah. Not at that scale. No, probably not. All right, so I was looking for others that were kind of, I don't think we have anything else along those same lines. So let's tackle funding real quick. I'm not going to go into all of these. 120 million is a pretty big round, but they're calling it a pre-IPO round. I mean, unless it's early stage, like there are no Series C, Series D. Like people are calling them like you see debt financing rounds, you see add-on rounds, you see. I'm not even sure if I'm using the right terms for these, Tyler, but any big-ish rounds we're seeing are like this one. They're calling it a pre-IPO round. Like what? Is it a D? Is it an E?
Pre-IPO rounds it's just a generic term for saying this should hopefully be our last round before we IPO. Doesn't mean that IPO is imminent. Doesn't necessarily means IPO will be in the next year or even 2 years, right? It just means that this is likely going to be the last round before we IPO. We're driving towards, to IPO, you have to have much better business metrics than you do when you're a burning VC-backed company. And so this is kind of like saying, we're taking this money in, we're going to get our house in order, we're going to pull the EBITDA, we're going to pull the profit margin, we're going to pull everything into the levels expected by a publicly traded company in the next N number of months or years. And that's what this money is going to be dedicated toward, is making sure the company is ready to IPO. That's all they're saying.
So in Crunchbase, they're calling this round two things, two different rows: debt financing and private equity.
Yep. So private equity probably bought a chunk.
BlackRock.
Obviously, private equity bought a chunk. Which is interesting because the question begs, private equity tends to buy majority interests in an attempt to actually own the company and enforce those decisions for efficiency of the company that would drive the stock value higher. So tough to know whether that was a majority purchase or a minority purchase. They can't get involved in at either layer. And then a debt chunk is basically usually a convertible debt play where a bank will give you N number of millions, whatever, 20, 30, $50 million, and get equity if you convert to IPO with it. And in the meantime, you pay down that debt interest and debt over time. Sometimes it could also be lumped and jumboed, but most times you pay it down over time on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Yeah. And versus SASE here, which, I'm still kind of muddy on what that is. I know it all has to do with, managing network routes and connections and things like that. So it includes SD-WAN, ZTNA, secure web gateway, CASB.
I always thought it was a
RBI. I thought RBI had something to do with batting average. What's RBI?
Well, you thought RBI was batting average. I thought SASE was self-addressed stamped envelope. So what do we know?
Remote browser isolation. Okay.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff in this one. For $120 million, they better be doing well, getting ready for IPO in a crap market.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of funding in SASE. A ton of roll-ups have just resulted in SASE. Like all the CASB stuff that got funneled up, all that sits in some kind of CASB platform at this point. So a lot of value caught up there. So interesting to see what happens with it, but it does seem a lot like spaghetti thrown at the wall sometimes. Binary Defense raises $36 million. This is actually a sister company to TrustedSec. We've seen a lot of services firms, MDR firms, stuff like that, kind of spin off like a product company. In this case, it's a services firm spinning off an MDR firm. So Binary Defense does managed detection and response. So TrustedSec still has pen testers. They do security services and stuff like that. So I guess this is, separate branding, separate management for their MSSP. I'm not sure which round. It says institutional growth equity funding round, so it's not like a Series A or anything like that.
Yeah, from what I read from some of his social media, from Dave Kennedy's social media profiles, this is not an official round in the traditional sense.
Yeah, it's not a VC round, right?
It's right, exactly, and they're they've done really well with both businesses, both TrustedSec and Binary Defense Systems over the years, and they just want to ramp it up even quicker. They just built a new office. They're hiring a lot of people. And obviously this market's really, really hot right now. And with economies of scale and the economic downturn, it's probably going to become even hotter. So this was really an investment in the people and the tools that they have at their disposal, if I'm reading it right.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of vague for sure, but it does say it's, first of all, it's Invictus Growth Partners, it's growth equity and buyout firm. All right, well, you're buying shares and you're hoping it goes up. Isn't that just essentially a VC play? I mean, sure, they're talking about how bootstrapped it was and they're trying to play hey, we're still kind of this bootstrapped, scrappy, non-VC backed company, but not sure that that's actually any different than any other round we're seeing here.
Well, 36 million, still 36 million from outside the organization.
Exactly right. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. 36 million infused from somebody else. They got something in return. Typically it's equity or debt. Either way, they own a part of you, and that's what venture is.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Yeah. No, not going to talk about that one.
What about Alethea? What about Alethea number 7?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at as well.
Yeah. That looked. That definitely looks not like the others. So using machine learning to identify disinformation and social media manipulation. And the Series A, $10 million Series A, is led by Ted Schlein and Kevin Mandia. Yeah, so that's raises some eyebrows. And it did say Kevin Mandia. It didn't say, because Kevin Mandia is part of Ballistic Ventures. So yeah, I'm always confused on that. Like, usually you do have an individual attached to a VC investment. So
the headline.
Sometimes the wording makes
does say led by. It does say led by Ballistic in the headline when you click the link.
Oh, yes, it does. It does. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So sometimes it's just I try parsing the wording, and I can't imagine that Kevin Mandia is going to do investments outside of Ballistic Ventures. While he's a partner there. Yeah.
No. What's interesting to me on this one? Sure, it's a 10 million Series A, right? So first of all, what we're seeing a lot more of now, and I've been doing a bunch of research on the Series A sizing, is 10 million tends to be the sweet spot right now for the Series A's, right? 10, 12, 15. Somewhere in that number, usually in the 10 to 12 range, seems to be the sweet spot. So that's something that we can talk about from a trending perspective. But for this particular one, Ted and Kevin, I mean, come on, like that's a who's freaking who. That like if those two guys are sitting on your board, you're having a good day with introductions. You're having a great day with GTM support. You're having a great day from a board perspective. So, who knows how far along the technology is. But I think it's really unique. Disinformation, misinformation, and social media manipulation is a massive problem. I mean, almost to the point where you get into nation state discussions, you get into political issues, you get into all sorts of manipulation of media and humans. Super cool idea. I think it's shooting for a big target. Question is, can they create a technology that actually detects and mitigates that stuff?
So if you do look up this company, make sure you go to Athlea.com and don't just Google Athlea, because Athlea.ai is completely different. They are creating building a decentralized protocol to create an intelligent metaverse inhabited by interactive and intelligent NFTs.
Yeah, that's not the right stuff.
Not the same company.
Aletha's on the cutting edge of the fight against misinformation, one of our biggest threats to modern society. That's a big, hairy, audacious goal. I hope they get it. Sounds cool.
It's pretty bold. We definitely need somebody working on that, even if they're not super successful with it. It'd be interesting to see if we see a bunch more of these in the next 6 months.
Also, Adrian, in the fine print, it says the company was founded in 2019 and is woman-owned. So woman founder. That's super fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, we'd like to see more of that. Yep, definitely. Lisa Kaplan, Fiona Taylor. Very cool. And fairly rare. Still, unfortunately,
super rare.
Fairly rare. Yeah. All right. see what else we've got here. Blue Sapphire is, I think it's an Indian company. Looks like, going after, and we've seen a lot of these, these kind of purpose-built investigations stacks intended to be sold to either companies with decent-sized SOCs or to MSSPs, and they're going to white label it or something like that. So that's Blue Sapphire, not to be confused with the vape brand. Blue, different blue.
Yeah. Definitely don't want to be confused with the vape brand.
There's an Atlanta startup in here. What were they doing? Arnica. I didn't grok what they were doing though. Pretty close to me. I'm not sure it said what they were doing.
$7 million seed, healthy seed.
Healthy seeds.
They've been in stealth for 14 months. Oh, another
I can't even.
company.
That's frustrating. I can't even find a Jewel Ventures. Yeah, I can't even find a website for them. I don't know what they're doing.
I'm going to throw this out there. What the hell is the point of a press release that gets picked up to point at a article that's 2 paragraphs long that only talks about the fact that you're based in Tel Aviv and then talks about your funders, not you, but the people that paid you the money, and that's it. No website.
No, that article goes longer, but you have to create an account and get a free membership to read the rest of it on bizjournals.com.
So did it get picked up anywhere else?
You would think they would just use one of the typical.
TechCrunch got them.
Okay, I found a Silicon Angle article here.
Yeah, TechCrunch got it too. There's a TechCrunch piece.
Yeah, behavioral-based machine learning algorithms to software supply chain security.
So that's the hot thing. I want to. Let me dig into that with you for a second, Adrian.
Okay.
Supply chain used to be AppSec, software composition analysis, was the solution to your supply chain problems. For open source cyber. What is supply chain today? It feels like it's got 100 different angles to it now.
Yeah, so I mean, typically what I'm seeing is what we were calling SCA, but SCA is 2 years old, so people are starting to back away from that term. But the idea is, you've got all these libraries, all this code that you didn't write, that's built into your product. So you want to know if there's issues with it now, and you want to get notified, if there's some kind of issue with these libraries in the future. And one of the innovations I've seen here, I just, I mentioned earlier that I keynoted a conference called LASCon, which is an AppSec conference. First time I've been to a pure AppSec conference. And there were a few SCA vendors there, or, they're probably not using SCA anymore since that term is no longer cool. But, one of the innovations I saw was they won't just tell you if the library has vulnerabilities in it. They'll actually ignore the libraries that are not being actively used in your code, because you'll have a bunch of garbage, a bunch of noise in there, that's not actually a risk, because you don't use certain functions of it, or maybe you don't use it at all. It's just packaged up with maybe it comes as like a package with other libraries, and somebody just hasn't taken the time to weed them out. So it'll actually tell you
exploitability,
the ones you need. Yeah, exploitability, but based on stuff that's actively used by your code, and so it'll ignore the other stuff.
It's actually looking at call chains, actually looking at, is the functions that are vulnerable actually called. This was being done when I was working at Sonatype in 2013.
Sure.
None of that's new. They're just spinning it into a new angle. I don't think Sonatype ever rolled it out. I don't know. If
here they're talking about using machine learning to study the behavior of developers as they code and communicate with colleagues.
See, now that's
by doing this, the company says it's uniquely able to expose impersonators. Okay, so if somebody logs in as you, and
so it's user behavior analysis.
It's UBEA.
I'm confused.
What they're trying to look for there are the rogue committers that are committing getting access to a repo and committing malware. And not necessarily, you can hide the malware, but you can't hide the fact that you're a first-time committer, or you're committing things in weird places you don't normally commit, like things like that.
Right, like you paste a huge block of code in, commit and leave. That would be pretty suspicious.
Around in 2013 as well. I just don't know that these things ever got actually innovated inside the companies I was working for. But okay, super cool. The last thing I'll say about this particular company it has the Israeli mafia in play, right? It's got as the angel investors, it has the CEO and co-founder of Orca, Avi Shua, has Dror Davidoff, who's the co-founder and CEO of Aquasec, and I'm going to murder this name, but Baruch Sodogursky, the head of developer relations at JFrog, all participated in the round as well.
Yeah. And now we're going to move on from funding. Passage is joining 1Password. So 1Password did an acquisition. I understand Passage has something to do with passwordless. So yeah, it looks like they've got an iOS SDK, device native authentication, passkeys, SMS and email login. Yeah, so they're kind of like an authentication provider, I guess.
That could be interesting connected with 1Password. It could help jump 1Password forward with the types of technology that they can offer instead of just being a password manager. They can actually integrate inside the apps now and do better security there.
It looks like they might be like an Auth0.
Yes.
An authentication stack that you can embed into your application. So that's pretty cool. And they support Go, Angular, Node.js, React, all Vue, all the usual front end,
all the cool stuff.
Yeah, all the cool kid front end stuff. Yeah, interesting. That definitely takes 1Password in more of an enterprise direction. Certainly expanding beyond just the monolithic, password manager app. Let's see. So this one was funny. Number 17. So everybody was acting like this was a surprise, but Cisco's been saying that they were spinning down operations in Russia, and this was apparently part of it. But a bunch of people in Russia with Cisco Meraki devices, all of a sudden the config on their devices reset to 12345-sanctions from whatever SSID they had before. Now the SSIDs are all 12345 sanctions.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny.
And it definitely is a laugh out loud type of thing. But the irony of what you posted there is that it's from a guy named Viktor Platov, who is a consulting systems engineer at Cisco Systems, and who also has listed open to work on his headshot on LinkedIn. So
yes,
I'm not entirely sure the timing of what happened to him. I'm also not entirely sure that it's broader or more beyond than just Victor. But Victor certainly had an interesting experience.
Oh, no, it was posted all over the place. I saw this all over the place. Yeah.
Well, good for you, Victor. Your own employer screwed you over.
I'm sure this was disruptive to businesses. So, yes, Cisco did send out the notice, but I don't know how many direct notices they got, or if they put the notices places people would see them. But yeah, yes. So here in the West, we probably celebrate this because haha, screw Russia. But also, it's kind of a reminder that like our mobile phones, Apple and Google can rip pretty much any app off our phones at any point in time. They do have the ability to do that, and anything that's cloud controlled, like Cisco Meraki devices, or maybe your security appliances and stuff like that. Anybody can.
I'm going to go way beyond that. I'm really going to double down on this problem, because literally anything that is centralized, you have the ability to get shut down, period, full stop.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, right? So, for example, I'm launching a Substack starting tomorrow. It's going to be sending out. What if Substack decides to say, hey, we're going out of business, or hey, we're not going to support anybody from North Carolina anymore? I'm done.
part of what slowed me down putting together the stories here is Substack was down yesterday. They were returning 504s to everybody for a couple hours yesterday, which really slowed me down getting the stories loaded.
So, I mean, I think it's just that's the nature of having centralized, cloud-centric style solutions. And everything's moving more and more towards that over time. I think it's going to be really bad when Amazon goes down, or an Azure cloud goes down for a period of time. Just huge swaths of businesses will fail. Right, we'll just be stuck in the mud until things get fixed. And if the company decides for whatever
is the
reason,
answer.
A lot of Russia toast.
DeFi.
DeFi.
Of course, that's all centralized too, right? Like some kind of exchange has to run the, none of it works without centralized services anyway.
Power always consolidates into the hands of few.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything? 4 ways cybersecurity startups can boost adoption and shorten time to value. That is mostly an article about product-led growth, I think. But still, some
want to
good
get
points.
Me going, we can dig into that one.
Yeah, some good points, some good stuff in there. Interesting here, number 15. FTC takes action against Drizly and its CEO, and they took action against the CEO personally. Any company he creates in the future, he has to go hard on security for, according to the FTC. So not just this company, but any future company that he's an officer for, he's got to, be really serious about security.
Define hard.
According to who?
Necessary data, limit future data collection, implement an information security program. Wow.
Yeah, they get somewhat prescriptive and specific here. I mean, certainly better than some of the stuff we've seen come out of the White House. It's a bit vague, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be interesting. Like, if he has to do this for all his future companies, limit future data collection. Going forward, Drizly must refrain from collecting or storing personal information unless it's necessary. Well, there's always the clause, right? Unless it's absolutely necessary. So that's
and you can argue that it was necessary. Yeah.
You got it. Bingo.
Yeah. Yeah. Room to argue in there, but I mean, just the fact that, hey, buddy, hey, we're going to be watching you. We get our eyes.
That's
like that could be effective in its own, right?
That's right.
And then we've got this article number 16 here. What you need to know about the U.S.'s forthcoming data privacy legislation. Katie, do you want to tell us about this?
Indeed. Well, it certainly ties into the last story and talking about provisions that can give you an out. So the American Data Privacy and Protection Act is something that's being proposed as a U.S. legislation, a federal law that would supersede any of the state laws. And it actually has some good things in it in terms of privacy protection, certainly better than what we have as a country right now, which is nothing. And there are only a small handful of states that have pretty robust privacy laws at present. And one of the arguments against this comes from the California legislature, who argues that this is too watered down. So there's a pretty long article, actually, and it goes through some of the items in the bill, who is subject to this, what does covered data mean, what are some of the things that they would be requiring if this law were to pass. I'm not sure that in its current iteration it's going to pass, but it's at least a nod towards the fact that we need something better, that we have a history and a tradition in this country of leaving things up to individual states, and that's okay for certain things, but when it comes to business, you're dealing with states like Alaska or Mississippi that basically have nothing. And then states like California that are a lot more I don't want to use the wrong terms and show my bias, that are a lot more strict about what they consider data privacy protection and the requirements to which businesses are held. And this really does create a conundrum for businesses, because if there is a business in one of those states that doesn't really require hardened privacy protections, they have to think about how they manage people's data differently, because very few companies are going to architect their privacy and security programs to the hardest requirement.
Right.
So
not unless somebody forces them to, right?
Sorry?
Not unless somebody forces them to, right?
Not unless somebody forces them to, but there are always ways to get around that. Like we were just talking about with the last one, there's, what classifies this data as necessary for collection? What quantifies as, special or certain purposes, specific purposes? The specificity on specific is very unspecific in most of these cases. So it really can become very, very difficult for companies. It would be, I think it would make a lot of companies' lives easier if there were a federal law, but there are a lot of states that don't believe that to be true. There are a lot of businesses that don't want to be forced into something that's a lot harder for them to do, because we saw, in the lead up to GDPR, how companies around the globe, not just in the European Union, but companies around the globe had to figure out what to do. Now, preparing for GDPR was a good exercise, because it got a lot of companies, even in the US, because,
sure,
global, we are, we're not in this siloed world anymore. Digital has taken that away.
So
it was a good exercise, but.
Question, Katie, if you prepped for GDPR, are you mostly pretty much ready for this then?
GDPR is tougher. Yeah, GDPR, the requirements for GDPR are tougher for this.
So you're probably
one
good
of the big things is you don't have to hire a chief data
or a DO.
Yeah. So that actually complicates things, I think, because if you don't have somebody who is skilled and trained and knowledgeable and has the background, you might be floundering around as a business. So yeah, if you prepped for GDPR, you probably are like, okay, I can do this. But again, you're dealing with a different scale. You're going to be dealing with a lot of different requirements. Some of them are similar, but this still isn't as robust as GDPR.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Katie. Interesting to see that kind of evolve. I know we've got we had somebody on talking. There are 4 different states where they're putting together different data privacy laws, but yeah, it would be good to get a federal one in. Even Brazil's got one. Like a lot of companies are way ahead of us here. I don't mean to say even Brazil. Brazil is actually, being down there, like the financial system, they do a lot of stuff that's just way ahead of us. Like they don't know what a check is, right? Like certain generations have never seen a paper check before, and I think it's ridiculous that we exchange money by like signing our name on a piece of paper. It seems ancient. But couple of great reports here, 23, 24, 25, 26. Not going to dive into those too far, but state of crypto security is an interesting one. Spoiler, it's very, very bad. $2 billion stolen already so far this year from different crypto projects and exchanges. A couple on ransomware trends here, and then one that's kind of a response to the Joe Sullivan case, a CISO's guide to legal risks and liabilities. So, I think for most people, they're like, well, if you put your ethical hat on, you don't have to worry too much about what's been going on with Joe Sullivan. Like if you don't try and hide stuff, that's clearly illegal to hide. You don't have too much to worry about, but still worth a read. Some good contributors to that guide.
I actually, in the wake of the initial Joe Sullivan allegations and the the charges against him, I had a really long talk with Mark Rash, and he had a really lawyers don't think like a lot of the rest of us think, and he just gave me a lot of things to think about, as it pertains to law versus what is either emotional or what an individual might think about as ethical or moral. So there are a lot of nuances in it, and so I'd be really interested to hear this, because Mark and I did have a really good talk a couple of years ago, and that was when things were just starting to come out, and he looks like he's the head of a team of a lot of really good names, like you mentioned, but it was definitely interesting to spend an hour and a half or so on the phone with a lawyer who had a very unemotional view of what was going on, as well as the deep knowledge of, okay, this is actually what this means in legal terms versus, I don't think you mean what you're saying. What's the Princess Bride quote? I don't think you understand what you're saying. I
don't think that word means what you think it means. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that was basically the gist of it for a couple of different points, I would say, but whatever it was. And he'd say, well, actually, legally what it means is, so it clarified a lot of things in my mind.
Yeah.
Right at the outset.
Yep. Cybersecurity lawyers are good to chat with. I got to chat with one as well on the Joe Sullivan case, though it was a Chatham House rule situation. So two more I want to touch on here. Number 30, just the economics of this was kind of breaking my brain when I saw this. You can get access to, so this is the last quarter, I think Q2 2022, you could get access to 576 corporate networks for $4 million. That's the total of what everybody was asking on these initial access broker, like clearly illegal black market websites where they sell access to companies. And I was sitting here thinking, like, this is smaller than the smallest funding that we'll talk about today. Like,
yeah. I mean, that's pretty good ROI, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's less than $8,000 a company to get into a company. That fits into quite a few marketing budgets for security.
Yeah, it's under $7,000.
They can just buy access to companies' networks and fix them.
There's a couple of points here, though, right? According to the article, Q2 of this year, that total value was $660,000. Now it's up to $4 million. So my gut tells me this particular collection of data was probably a fresh site that was just starting to announce things with access. So I think it's kind of a misrepresentation of the true value. However, if you can pop a couple companies at $7,000, the ROI is probably financially there to get 10, 20, 50 out of each one. It could be a reasonable return on investment from a business perspective for the attackers. The other thing to throw out there is, what does access mean, right? You got to get into the nuance of that. Is it access to one person's email? Is it access to the admin system or the LDAP system, right? Like, fundamentally different levels of access.
It differs quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, it's access to a system who has admin access to, the company's networks or other systems. So it's definitely something. It is initial access vector. It's something that presumably you could build off of, and occasionally some of them that hit these sites, the researchers say is just garbage. And with any black market, you've got to be careful not to not to do business with the wrong person. But the actual report that this comes from is number 24 on our list of stories today. And that comes from, what is the name of that company? That is Kayla. I'm not sure how to say the name, but that's part of the work that they do, is they do that analysis. And then the last one today is for the cybersecurity marketing folks out there. If you both want to click that link, it's to a tweet from Malwarebytes where they issue an apology for publishing a story using stereotypical hacker, green commands on green screen hacky and hooder imaging, which goes against their. I just thought it was cute. I
absolutely loved it because they go through and not only just say, "Hey, we're sorry for using hoodie hacker photographs," but they also go further along to say that they're going to hold themselves to higher standards and use pictures of the word ransomware spelled out with letters cut from magazines, pictures of padlocks, and photographs of people looking at their laptops with shocked faces going forward. That's the higher standard that they're going to hold themselves to.
And an intern has been chosen to take the blame. He has been chosen to take the blame. This intern, this unpaid intern, is taking the fall.
And HR is in the process of informing them of the mistake they are now responsible for. This is good comedy. Yeah, it's great.
Oh man.
But yeah, I had to end with something light like that. Sometimes the news is pretty heavy, but this one made me happy.
Well, because you're not the intern.
I've been that intern, but today I am not that intern. Not today. Not this day. Thanks so much, Tyler and Katie, for joining me today. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Adrian, as always.
All right, and a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We will be back same time next week. We got a good one for you next week also. We've got a CISO panel where we are going to discuss that. Actually, not everybody on it is a CISO. We got some great folks. Some of them are CISOs, some of them aren't, to discuss the ins and outs, the ethics of that case and that situation and the impact it could have on the industry. And I'm very, very excited about that one next week. So see you then.